When billionaires save millions, it's the poor who pay with their lives. In a recent interview on national television, Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett broke the silence surrounding a controversial bill backed by Donald Trump and House Republicans that promises massive tax cuts for the ultra-wealthy and big corporations, but at a devastating cost: cutting Medicaid, the very lifeline for millions of working-class Americans. According to a new Washington Post and Ipsos poll, 2 out of every 3 Americans oppose this bill, and yet it's being pushed forward, harder than ever, by both House and Senate Republicans. But what does this bill actually mean? Let's break it down. In a recent interview on national television, Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett broke the silence surrounding a controversial bill backed by Donald Trump and House Republicans that promises massive tax cuts for the ultra-wealthy and big corporations, but at a devastating cost: cutting Medicaid, the very lifeline for millions of working-class Americans. According to a new Washington Post and Ipsos poll, 2 out of every 3 Americans oppose this bill, and yet it's being pushed forward harder than ever by both House and Senate Republicans. But what does this bill actually mean? Let's break it down. Jasmine Crockett didn't hold back in the interview. She said plainly, people are going to die. Think about that for a moment. Not suffer, not struggle, die. The stories are already surfacing of cancer patients whose only access to treatment is Medicaid, of rural communities where hospitals are shutting down, of children with special needs who may now lose services entirely. Jasmine talks about people she knows personally, people who are alive today because of Medicaid. If these cuts go through, they won't be here tomorrow. And this isn't a Democrat or Republican issue. It's a human issue. The Trump administration is trying to spin the bill as middle-class friendly. They say, hey, we're not adding a tax. You should love this. But Jasmine shuts that down fast. She asks, would you really trade a few dollars off your tax bill to lose your health care? For most Americans, the answer is obvious. Saving $5 means nothing if you can't afford your insulin. Keeping $20 means nothing if your nearest hospital shuts down. Trump's team is hiding the ugly side of this legislation behind smooth slogans and media distractions. But the truth? This bill doesn't help you. It helps the richest 1%, while millions of regular families are left to suffer. Traditionally, the Senate has been seen as a cooling chamber for extreme legislation, a place where bad bills go to be made better, more moderate, more reasonable. But not this time. Instead of protecting vulnerable Americans, Senate Republicans like Ron Johnson are doubling down. They're making the cuts even deeper. Jasmine reveals that the bill barely passed the House with only 1 vote, just 1. She expected the Senate to fix it. To think about the 766,000 people that each senator represents, to think about the rural hospitals that will shut down, to think about the fact that every single state has Medicaid patients who will lose coverage. But instead, they pushed it forward, harsher than before. And who will suffer the most? Red states. Yes, ironically, the very states whose voters often support these lawmakers are the ones that will bleed the most. One of the most shocking parts of Jasmine Crockett's interview was her question: where are the hospitals? Hospitals, especially in rural areas, stand to lose billions. And yet, unlike the farmers who showed up in full force when their interests were threatened, the hospital lobby has remained almost silent. That silence is deadly. Rural hospitals, already on the edge, will collapse. Doctors will leave. Specialists won't come. And the next time someone in a small town has a heart attack, there won't be a hospital within 50 miles. Jasmine Crockett, who grew up in East Texas, knows this reality. She's seen it. And she's calling it out now before it's too late. So, Where does this leave us? Well, 33% of Americans still have no opinion about this bill. That's millions of people who don't yet realize what's coming. That's why this message matters. Because once the bill becomes law, it'll be too late to undo the damage. Jasmine Crockett believes there's still time to fight, to raise our voices, to demand answers, and to hold lawmakers accountable. We can't let this bill pass quietly, not when lives are on the line. This isn't just about tax codes and political strategy, it's about people. Real Americans. Sick, poor, working class, rural, elderly, being asked to trade their lives so billionaires can buy a third yacht. That's not patriotism. That's not policy. That's cruelty disguised as reform. So if you're watching this, now is the time to speak. Call your senators. Talk to your family. Share this video. Because if we stay silent, this bill will pass. And when it does, history will ask, where were you when America chose money over mercy? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real, unfiltered coverage of what's happening behind the headline.